All right. Hello, everybody. Hello, Internet world. It's me, Jamin Marshall. And today we're talking to my good buddy, Grant Sabin. How's it going, buddy?
Doing good, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well. I'm doing good. I got coffee.
Mhm.
Everything's good in my little dungeon here.
Yeah.
So basically, like your band's name is, so it's Grant Sabin and the Juke Joint Highball, right?
Yeah.
And you guys are your headquarters is in Colorado Springs, right?
Pretty much. Yeah. That's where I live. Our drummer lives in Fort Collins.
Okay.
So otherwise we probably would have been doing more like live stream band shows and stuff. But yeah, he's all the way up there. So he's itching to play extra, I think.
I was going to ask you about your live stream presence, because I know you're doing some of it on there with Distillery 291.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I play there at their tasting room every Wednesday night. And so they've been really, really cool about like all of the bands that they had booked. They just kept the shows and kept the whole commitment and compensation and everything.
Wow.
Just through the live stream thing. So that's pretty awesome.
That is rad. That is quite that's quite the feat to pull off these days, actually.
It really is. I think it's only something that like a whiskey company could pull off. Like a regular bar couldn't really do that. But
no, because the whiskey company can keep selling their product and making hand sanitizer.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
I don't know if they do that, but
yeah, they made a bunch of it. They just use the heads for their from their whiskey and just bottle it up.
Yeah.
So
that's a very smart thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so tell me a little bit about your own personal experiences with mind-altering drugs and how they've either added to certain aspects of your writing or just your concept of the world, or and maybe certain ways that they've taken away. If any.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I feel like it depends on the substance as to like how it affects how it has affected me or how it would affect anybody. But like I think that when it comes to lower level substances like coffee and weed and nicotine and things like that, it's like those tend to absorb themselves into just like everyday life or not necessarily everyday life, but into just like kind of your habits and things like that. So they don't become yeah, exactly. They kind of cease to be mind expanding and they become more of a thing where
you get used to it.
Yeah, you get used to it and you're just like, this is normal. And I remember being like 18, 19 years old and living in Manitou Springs and having a really, really easy access to a lot of LSD. And and that became this thing that was sort of like coffee, where like there's coffee in the pot and there's acid in a book on the bookshelf. And it would be, not like an everyday thing, but it would be kind of this thing where, I'd wake up and I'd have a cup of coffee and maybe I'll take a hit of acid. Who knows? And it was kind of one of those things where I didn't even think about what I had to do that day or anything. I would just like take a little bit of it sometimes and go to the bank and do my usual stuff. And I think you saw a little bit of that when I was on tour with the Flask. It was like I would just be like, yeah, this seems like this is a beautiful sunrise. It seems like it'd be like even more beautiful with a little bit of LSD.
Yeah, I was gonna bring that up. That's definitely the vibe I got from the situation. Was I've never done acid. I still haven't. But when you were on tour with us, which back then it was just like, hey man, get in the van, let's go across the country, and you're like, sure. That's how we toured with Tommy V.
Yeah.
And Willie T and a lot of folks that we were just like, well, we got an extra spot if you don't mind being totally uncomfortable and sleeping in really weird places for a week or two, then come along. And you were like, shit, yeah. And then I realized after a couple of days that you were just taking hits of acid sitting there in the bench seat behind me while I was driving. And
yeah, just all the time.
Wow.
Yeah,
I can't imagine. I'm a little bit scared to do it. That's why I never have really. Because I think that the way that I'm wired, I might just go away and never come back to another universe. So,
totally. I'm scared to do it now. Like,
it's been a while, right?
Yeah, it's been a little while. There's been some times over the past few years where I've had a little bit of psychedelics, but it's always like just a tiny amount, like, like maybe not even enough to affect some people. But because I've had those experiences of like just kind of taking acid however much at any amount, at any time, really, like, because I've had those experiences, it's like it's such a familiar kind of mental flavor that I just like.
So still a little bit like coffee.
Yeah, exactly. Where like even just the smell of it sort of wakes you up, know. Like it was the same thing with where even just like a tiny little twinge of that would just make me like just remember all of that whole experience. And I don't know, I think that they can be mind expanding. I think that they were mind expanding for me at the time that I was doing that a lot. And but it got to a point where I kind of felt like it was a window and not a door, you know what I mean?
Right.
Where you were still kind of stuck in your own place and looking at this version of you, and eventually you have to walk out the door and just be a person. So.
Yep. Yeah, it's important to be present at at certain points in life, more than others, but definitely that's the train that I've been on for quite a while now. And speaking of psychedelics, I just dawned on me, I have to bring Willie T on here and talk to him about that. I don't know if you've spoke with him about DMT and.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It was on the Larry and his Flask short bus that we had all played a show in Manitou, and we sat down in the bus and he talked to me for about an hour and a half about DMT.
That's one of those things that you never know until you know.
Yeah. It was funny, he had told me about DMT, and then it was like a few weeks later that somebody said they had some and that they wanted me to try it. And it was like because of that conversation with Willie where I was like, yeah, I'll give this a shot. And
and how was it?
And I mean, it was incredible. It was like kind of indescribable, really. It's like just one of those things. It's like within like a half a minute or so, I like had completely forgotten like who I was or what was going on or anything. And when I came back to reality, it at first just kind of felt like another vision, and I was just like, oh, now I'm in a room with these people. And then it started to set in that I was like, oh, this is actually my house, and but what was interesting is that after that experience with DMT, I like stopped doing drugs, I like stopped doing any sort of hallucinogens just because I felt like that was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. And it just like, it kind of cracked everything open and made me realize like acid isn't a thing that you do. It's just a drug,
But some people like you can just, you did that and you came out in a good way. Some people can't, some people don't come back from that sort of habit.
Yeah, they get fried from it for sure, And I think that can be I think that's a quantity thing too. Like if somebody gets kind of a tolerance for it and then they take 20 hits of acid, you're not going to come back from that,
No, I don't.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But people do that. Like that's.
Yeah. Especially up there in Manitou, right?
Oh yeah. Land of the free.
Yeah. It reminds me of Lemmy Kilmister, man. I mean, he was huge into acid. I think that was one of the first drugs that he really dabbled with. And it, who knows? I mean, he might have, I read most of his book, but I can't remember if he got into the exact quantity of acid that he would take when he was roadieing for Jimi Hendrix, but it was massive. Those guys, those roadies would just fucking do tons of it and go
Yeah.
about their business.
Yeah. Well, and it gives you like this, what they call, what I've referred to as crazy leg juice, that like, it gives you this like thing where if you have a tolerance for it, it essentially just gives you this infinite surplus of energy where you can just lift things that are hundreds of pounds and briskly walk and just do your shit.
That explains the roadies. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, maybe that's why he liked it so much, because then he went on to the, speed and ECP and whatever.
Which would also, I'm sure, give you crazy leg juice.
All sorts of juice. Yeah. Okay, so drugs.
And then I also have been doing like maybe once a week or so, or like sometimes a little bit further apart, I've been doing some live blues guitar lessons of like just kind of showing people some tricks. Like when I got lessons, I only got like 3 of them.
Yeah.
And my friend, John Alex Mason, who taught me, just gave me these 3 lessons with these fundamentals. And he was like, if you practice these things, then you won't need like a whole lot of other lessons. So,
cool.
That's like, since that's kind of the way I learned, I kind of ran out of road really quick with the lessons, because I just don't want to like shove things down people's throat and make them feel like they have to play this certain way or anything.
Right.
But yeah, I'll be doing that. It's kind of just like here and there. But I have 4 blues lesson videos on my Facebook page that are still available to watch. So
cool.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
And then where can we find your last album? On Spotify and Apple Music and YouTube and all that?
Yeah, all of that. It's called Bourbon and Milk, and it's it's an album I did with the Juke Joint Highball with Joe Johnson and Kevin Ott. And there's 11 songs on it, and it's all kind of dirty, gritty blues stuff. And that's available on Spotify, iTunes, Apple Music, all of that stuff. So
very good stuff. Well, thanks so much, Grant. I really appreciate it. Make sure to go and check out Grant Sabin's music. Give him your money. Help support local bartenders and local musicians. It's very important in these times. Grant, it's been a pleasure, man. Thank you so much, and I'll talk to you soon, buddy. Man.
Yeah, thanks, Jamin. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. All right, man. See you in a bit.
Take it easy, brother.